Well, good everybody. I'm currently, first of all, we're early. It's not 9 o'clock, of course. It's the 8th of November, and we're a couple of hours early, 7:30 instead of 9 o'clock. But I'm a few hours away from the airport and getting on a plane at midnight back to France. And Godspeed arrives, so that's the last boat in. Pretty happy chappies indeed. Great welcome from family and friends and wives and kids and all that sort of thing. So they're pretty happy, and there's a classic picture. I don't know if it's up yet, but all the other entrants left cards for Godspeed. Each team wrote a card, and there's a classic picture of them in the Golden Arches, McDonald's, tucking into hamburgers and chips, and reading through all the cards from all the other entrants. So that was pretty cool. Things are, so they're settled. We've moved Explorer off the dock today, so there's none left there, and the Clipper boats are due in tomorrow, I think. So we're well and truly out of there, and it's all everyone's gone, everyone's ticked off, I'll be the next one to go. The Neptune story continues. You've probably seen it on the tracker that they're heading into Port Elizabeth. They'll be in sometime very early tomorrow, and we've been explaining to their team what the reality is, and certainly what's happened so far. Neptune have a copy of the notice of race on board the boat. And so they've asked us for approval to go into the harbour, which we can give them, because they're obviously looking to seek shelter to consider the issue of their steering and their rudder and so on. We're not sure exactly what the rudder issues are, but certainly we can allow that without giving penalty, provided no one gives them any assistance whatsoever. And we don't know whether they will take assistance. Their team is asking clarification on lots of things. Can they open their comms bag? Can they do this, that, and the other? And the reality is that the moment they get any outside of assistance, then they're knocked out of that leg, and they are still in the event, of course, and they make their way to Auckland. But they may well just go in there, and if they decide to moor alongside, so there's two things they could do. Not knowing Port Elizabeth, they could take the boat inside the port and drop anchor in a sheltered area and dive on the rudder and have a look. Or they could decide they want to go and tie alongside the wharf or somewhere, and provided that no one touches them or gives them any resupply and so on, nothing else other than verbal assistance, they still haven't taken outside assistance, but we may need to assess the potential for any time penalty, depending on exactly what they do. It would be unlikely because they're not getting a performance advantage by having that opportunity to keep going, sort of. There's lots of issues there if they do tie alongside. If they just anchor inside the port, there's pretty much no requirement for time penalty. So we just wait and see how that plays out. But we've explained it very clearly to their team now, and we hope they can fix whatever the issue is. We don't know what it is, or check things and then carry on pretty quickly. What else is happening? That's pretty much about it. I will go straight to the tracker now. Oh, I've got a wobbly. I'm propped up with a stool. I'm in the office of the V&A Waterfront. You can't see that wobble, but I see the wobble. And we're, so temporary. So where do we go here? Okay, I'm on this one. So here's today's tracker. Put the wind in there. That's leg 2 of the race. Now I need to just expand that. So in fact, we'll come back and look at the big picture for weather coming through and see what's going on. They're all pretty much following the run line down towards the Crozes and Kerguelen, maybe. Pretty benign weather, very favourable weather. In fact, we've had some SoundCloud calls, and you'll see everyone's on a real high. Lots of whales and so on. Beautiful sailing conditions, following breezes. They're making good speeds, and it's a pretty interesting experience. Just as a matter of interest, I've been involved with Antarctica and Wales for 20 years or something, but this area down around Kerguelen is one of the biggest, it's not a migration route, but it's a feeding route. All the humpbacks are coming down here to get their food down south, and there's a massive amount of whales come through here to the point that they will see plenty as they get further across this area. They're already seeing quite a lot, but believe me, this is like Highway 1. And often you hear of yachts hitting unidentified floating objects down here, and you can bet your bottom dollar every time that happens, it's a whale. It's one of the most intense areas in the world for whale traffic, all going down into the krill feeding zones down south. They're coming from all over the place down that direction. Just hide that a bit. So there's a bit of a low pressure down here, not doing a lot. The potential is to have pretty good weather, looking to big picture weather for a while, I think. Come across here, yeah, there's no, there's an 11th, 12th, there's no big storms there. Wow, look at this one. That's a beauty. Anyway, we'll come back to today's weather and we'll start to zoom in on the fleet. Sterna's doing okay. We'll start at the back end of the fleet again. I'll put the latitude grids on. She's finally got to 35. So Sterna's doing 7 knots and did about an 84 nautical mile a day. That's not too bad. There's not a huge amount of wind there. And they've had a little bit forward of the beam, but they're on track. So they're managing to hold one leg on starboard tack. 7 knots, that's okay. It'd be pretty flat water there, so they'd be enjoying that. Neptune is doing 3.4 knots, so not a lot of breeze. Here's Port Elizabeth up here, and that's knocked them out of the game for a bit. Yeah, you can see it's pretty soft. So at that rate, they've got now distance to to Port Elizabeth now. Oh, jeepers, they haven't made much ground. 67 miles to Port Elizabeth, 3 knots. They might not be there till tomorrow afternoon. Let's just see what the weather is doing for them, just to get an idea. I'll just click it through 24 hours. Here we go. Boom, boom. No, there's a nice breeze there. It's certainly not headwinds. It's on the beam. Enough breeze to get going. That's 1 o'clock tomorrow. So yeah, they've got breeze all the way into Port Elizabeth. And then when they get there, let's. I'm going to do something radical here, seeing we've got a bit of time and we're early. I'm just going to open it up. We'll get a bit of a rundown on what Port Elizabeth is looking like. I've never been there. Let's see how big it looks and whether they can anchor in the bay inside the harbour. Yeah, it's a pretty big harbour. I'm going to zoom right down here. They might not be able to anchor in, or might not be allowed to anchor in there. I'm not sure. Looks has given them all the information they need. I don't know what the depth contours are in here, but it looks as if they could. There's something like marina berths down here. They could possibly get inside here and get permission from the port captain to anchor in here, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's an option for them, but that's a bit what it looks like. You can follow that up on Google Earth if you want. And we'll now go back here, put the weather back. So that's those two. Then we've got the whole fleet booked into one great sailing conditions. Now the speeds here, forgetting about currents yet, and Duke's still flying along, doing 11.2 knots, 245 nautical mile a day. That's not bad. That's that's like a 10 knot average for the whole 24 hours, which is pretty impressive. Jump on everyone there. First in line on us, second in IRC, and second in flyer class. So that's not too bad. Maiden doing 10.3 knots, 233 nautical mile a day. That's good. This one's interesting. Translated 9 and Spirit of Helsinki are on top of each other. I'd say they'd be just about looking at each other. Let's see what the distance is between them. I think this is really close, side by side and just a few miles apart. So they might be looking at each other. Here we go. Boom, boom. Yeah, 1.5 miles apart. So they'd see each other on the horizon for sure. It's only 1.9 miles. Yeah, they're looking at each other. So that's interesting. I don't know how that's involved because in these sorts of conditions, Spirit of Helsinki should be way out in length. Maybe it's currents. We'll have a look at it in a sec. In fact, we'll look right now because that'll answer the question on what's going on here. No currents. That's not an issue there. Something's, once again, translated 9, doing really well. 10 knots, 242 nautical mile a day. Let's see if they took ground. 240 nautical miles. They took 2 miles out of, translated took 2 miles out of Spirit of Helsinki, which is doing 10.1 knots. So they're hammer and hammer. And if we're stuck on the wind, if we go back a bit now, just to look at what's going on. Now that forecast is about 28 knots, gusting 35. So that's very interesting. That must be suiting translated really well. Let's have a look at the wave height. Yeah, it's quite solid. That's a 3-4 meter sea. So maybe even more than 4 meters. So that's interesting as well. They're well and truly in the Southern Ocean. These are hangovers from bigger systems that have come through in the last week or so. The sea doesn't die down in a hurry. So I'm quite surprised to see that level of sea state in that current level of wind. Let's just scan back for the whole fleet. Yeah, they've all got pretty solid waves there. And if you want to know what it is, if we come down to the bottom of the grid, you can see here, this area over here is about 8-9 metre seas. That's when you start to see it turn to sort of a lighter red. In the dark purple, it's like 5 to 6. So this is 5 to 6 metre seas. They'll be surfing on those. The swell's usually from the southwest. Later on, when it gets technical, I will give you an indication and show you on windy what's actually happening with the seas. But they're all getting pretty solid seas, even though it's 25 and 30 knot winds. So that's kind of interesting as well. So back to the rest of the fleet that's pretty much bunched up. We've done Maiden, the Spirit of Helsinki, the speed to keep, 9.1 knots, 220 nautical mile days. They'll be happy with that. But look at that. There's Triana on their hammer right beside them, doing 7.7 knots and 192 miles in the day. So that's a pretty good performance. Evrika's pulling away from Jeepers, I've forgotten the name. I've got a block on White Shadow. So Evrika's jumped on White Shadow, doing 9.1 knot and 200 mile day. That's pretty good. 204 mile day. White Shadow 9 knots, 179 mile day. It must be transitioning something between reefs and one reef or two reef and jibs or whatever. And the sea is quite solid, so that would have a play as well. They wouldn't necessarily be running spinnakers in this weather. I mean, it's still a bit windy for that, but the swell always plays havoc with your spinnaker when you're trying to fly them in the conditions that you normally would, because the boat's rolling around so much. Unless you've got a bow net between the mast and the forestay and stuff, you can easily get spinnaker wraps and so on. So Tapio's flying 208 nautical mile day, and Galliana with secure 7.8 knots. They've got to be liking that. Can't complain there. Right next to Outlaw. Excuse me. That's even more exciting for them, because that's quite close. It's within VHF range. They may not be able to see each other, but they would probably know exactly where they are. And that would make Tapio very happy, I think. Back here, White Shadow, 9 knots, 179. So let's just, so they're all one group. There's no lead pack. Excuse me. They're all sticking together on this. So I'll come back a bit and we'll walk the wind through. Excuse me. And see exactly what they're likely to get in the next 24 hours. I'll push it through. There we go. Excuse me. Now it's lightening off, but the lead's going to get a push. So this is where you run the risk the tail enders can start to move back from a new system. But there's a system forming here, which is a little low pressure system, and that's going to drive the boats forward. But then if they drive through that too far, and they're probably going to do another 200 mile day. So let's see where 200 miles is. There's 100. So that's a bit of fun. There's 200 mile day. So they're going to interact with this. They're going to be over here. So the leaders are going to stop. They're going to drive straight into that hole, if that makes sense. And the tail enders are going to be in this breeze, which keeps them compressing towards the front of the feet. So you're going to see the tail enders possibly in 24 hours start to close the gap on the leaders and bunch them up. The key with all of this when you're in the Southern Ocean is not to get separated into another system. There's these highs and lows going through, and if some boats are in a high and the other boats in a low, it's very hard to move across to the other system. And so this is good for the tail enders. They're going to absolutely catch up a little bit with the leaders. So that's okay. So I'll build it up a bit more, and we can see what. Oh no, I want to go back. Sorry. So we can see exactly what's going to happen the next day. So it's 7, we go to the 10 up here, and then it's all coming in. So it might not be long, but there's going to be an impact for there a little bit, and then they'll all be along in here somewhere, having a northerly breeze, sailing along quite nicely. So for the next couple of days, all looks good. Is there any storms coming? I'm going to go back smaller, and that's the 10th. Let's go to the 11th, see what's happening. Nope, it's all pretty good. Generally, they're in the roaring 40s, so you've got northwesterlies here, you've got southwesterlies. They're going to all keep sailing quite well. There's the 11th, there's the 12th. Gets a bit tricky from there because you've got a big hollow there. Oh, not too bad. Anyway, no big storms for a while. Let's just have a peek at the 13th and 14th. Wow, that's pretty cool. So it looks like good sailing ahead for the next 3 or 4 days. Okay, I think let's have a look at the currents while we're here. We all know what's going on there to see who's affected and who's not. Oh, there we go. That's kind of interesting. So some of them are into it. They've cut across that one. So, yeah, okay. So there's 2 to 3 knots there, all coming down to the south, but I don't see a big deflection in the course, probably because their scale might be too small. Sometimes you can see it get knocked around. But you can see there, Penduic came down, boom, and they're trying to head up. These guys are still pretty straight. So, and how old are these figures? I didn't look. 4, okay, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. So these are 2 hours old from this report. That position was 2 hours ago. So that's pretty reasonable. Anyway, I think that's probably enough of that. I'm just going to come back and see if there's any questions here. Simon, hi. Pat, everyone's there. Your voice is very echoey. Oh, that's because I'm in an office with nothing in it. But anyway, good afternoon from Plymouth. There's only a couple. I've caught everyone early. There's only about 6 there. The mic is horrible. Okay, that's because of my voice and also because of the room, maybe. Anyway, sorry about that. Hopefully you can hear and see, and we will come back and see you all again tomorrow. There's but I won't be here. Lutz will be on tomorrow. I'm travelling all day. Jeepers. Maybe Lutz won't be because he's coming to pick me up. We can't get the train back to Lassade Ballon. We'll have to do that. We'll see. Okay, there'll be something happening tomorrow, so stand by. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.